Are Chelsea really back? I think that's kind of the gallows humour take tonight. Ipswich 2, Chelsea nil. I'm Daniel Childs. Chelsea end 2024 with a really dismal defeat. Ipswich, of course, have really struggled so far since being promoted to the Premier League. They haven't won at home. They've been struggling to keep any clean sheets. And of course, following the dismal end to the Fulham game, this was a really big chance for Chelsea to respond positively and get back on track. However, it really is another step down. And I was sat here after the Everton game and I had criticisms for the way Enzo Maresca handled the second half of that. Now, at the time, I think people were kind of like, oh, you're being a little bit too harsh. And in context, right, we always live in the context of right now. Like a week ago, I couldn't have told you that Chelsea would go on to absolutely fail to capitalise on a 1-0 lead against Fulham and lose to Fulham at home for the first time since the 70s and of course lose to Ipswich. However, when things build up, when you see a pattern emerge, it's hard to just ignore it. And unfortunately, over the past week, this has been a really bad week, I think, for Enzo Maresca. It's the first kind of alarm and maybe brutal reality to the job he's taken. Because in truth, it's been plain sailing for him so far. He's been able to split the A and B team. He's been able to keep most of his important players fit. And Chelsea, thanks to him and thanks to the talent within his group, have been able to do a lot better than people anticipated. Now, fourth going into the new year is still better than I think a lot of us feared in pre-season. Like a lot of us did not think Chelsea would be even having farcical, now it feels like, dreams of the title race. However, that does not mean the past week has not been highly concerning. And the squad management, the personnel decisions, the way the team suddenly looks very aimless and also very fatigued, despite, for long stretches of the season so far, actually having a lot of players who have not played more than one game a week. That is something that I was speaking to some people during the course of that game is also concerning. So for Enzo Maresca, this is really the first, I think, time when he's going to be asked serious questions. Listen, every guy in that position has been asked these questions before, specifically recently. Every Chelsea fan has sat here during the Christmas period after a strong start to the year when things start to go wrong. The big question for Enzo Maresca is whether he can turn the ship around quickly, because what it can't be is just a nice run of form that quickly deteriorates, because that is the concern I have. And some of those deep concerns I had about the squad during the course of the summer transfer window have started to rear their head again. And I think it was very evident today. The first thing to say about that starting lineup, yes, we all expected there to be changes. I think there needed to be changes because the team looks so devoid of energy, especially in the second half of that Fulham game, and we knew certain players would return. I wasn't surprised that Noni Madueke came back into the team. I wasn't surprised that Christopher Nkunku started. I wasn't even surprised that Joao Felix made his start back in the first team. I was a little bit surprised that Philip Jorgensen started. I'm not entirely sure he'll be starting again anytime soon. Of course, I'm not blaming him for the penalty, but I just think because this was a dismal day, I think Robert Sanchez will get his place back. But one of the big decisions that just did not pay off and looked baffling when I saw the team sheet, looked even more baffling as the game went on, was the inclusion of Axel Disasi at right back when we had not one, not two, but three potential players who could have played in their natural role at right back on the subs bench. Malo Gusto, who's obviously played a lot there recently, Josh Achimpong, and the returning Reece James. Now, I did not expect Reece James to start this game, so let's just say you want to take him out. You've still got two players there. Josh Achimpong has recently signed a new contract. He has been given, a lot of credit and a lot of praise internally. The club clearly want to keep him. This is the moment you start playing him as a player in the Premier League. This is when you need to start using him. Instead, he plays Axel Disasi, a player who has looked pretty concerning in even Conference League games where Chelsea have been pretty dominant. You play him in a Premier League game and his error directly leads to a second goal that kills the game. Now, yes, let's go straight to the start of this game. The penalty was not a penalty. It was a poor decision. VAR not overturning it. What is the point of having VAR if you're not going to overturn that decision? And then, of course, Delap, who has been highly rated and apparently scouted by Chelsea, has a really dominant game. He scores the penalty. Chelsea are 1-0 down. Now, to be fair to Chelsea, in the first half, we did create a lot of looks at goal. Palmer hit the post from a free kick. There were some good saves from Wharton, who decided to have a really big game as kind of a backup goalkeeper. However, I thought even if Chelsea got into some good positions in the first half, some of our just decision making or finishing was pretty poor. So you've got to give criticism to that. However, there were some troubling signs in that first half, particularly defensively. Although Chelsea had a lot of the ball, it was very concerning to me that the few times Ipswich were able to get forward, we looked very vulnerable. Tosin did not look comfortable whenever a player like Delap had to run at him. And there were many times throughout the course of the game when it would be one Ipswich player against like 3 or 4 Chelsea defenders. And it didn't look like Chelsea had a firm grasp on the situation. That in itself is very concerning. But at half-time, 1-0, you go, we've had a penalty decision go against us. We've created opportunities. I think that probably Maresca, this is another gimmick of his that unfortunately I want to see change very quickly. Be more proactive with your subs bench. I was stunned that no subs were made at half-time. Noni Madueke had barely shown up. I thought Joao Felix kind of was Joao Felix again. You know, sure, he's maybe a little bit offside, but I thought some of his decision-making was really, really poor. Some of the things he did within the game, I just thought annoyed me. Nkunku had rarely showed up. Of course, I've already mentioned Noni. And defensively, there were concerns. So there are reasons potentially to make some changes at the half-time interval. He doesn't. And unfortunately, it all comes too late because Disasi makes a horrendous decision with the ball. Someone was justifying the decision to play Axel Disasi that we'd have a lot of the ball, which Chelsea did, but he was kind of comfortable in possession. Which I think even if you're not the most avid tactician, you've watched enough of Axel Disasi to know he's not the most comfortable with the ball at his feet. So obviously it was ironic that it was playing the ball to a player in Omari Hutchinson who finished brilliantly and of course was sold by Chelsea last summer. One that I feel like maybe has got away from us once again. But then, you know, from there it kind of was very concerning to me how flat Chelsea looked. Other than the usual suspects of, you know, Cole Palmer trying to make something happen, Moises Caicedo trying his best to cover ground, how quickly Chelsea kind of descended into really bad decision making on the ball, consistently being drawn into scraps with Ipswich players. We lost our heads, and then the players who came off the bench unfortunately didn't have much of an impact. Jackson missed a one-on-one. Yeah, probably was offside, but it was a horrendous miss, and unfortunately Jackson has completely nosedived in terms of form when Chelsea needed him to pick up his form during this period. None of the other subs really looked that exciting. Jadon Sancho didn't impact the game, Malo Gusto didn't, and Pedro Neto came on a little bit later. All round it was a really, really bad night. I think the concerns for me is that I spoke about it during the summer, that the certain things within this squad concern me. The lack of depth in central midfield. I felt certain players just in the attack, maybe B team options as we've come to know them, simply weren't good enough and weren't reliable enough. You can't trust these players to bail you out. We already saw that with Joao Felix when he was on loan with us. Unfortunately, players like Noni Madueke have had some difficult moments, and some of these you can still say young players have kind of dived. The backups specifically defensively and in the goalkeeper position, I spoke about this consistently, just simply aren't good enough. Axel Disasi, I mean, shouldn't even playing a centre back for Chelsea. I mean, I could have told you, I was in Australia, I recorded it even before Disasi had kicked a ball for Chelsea. I questioned the reason for signing a player who I did not even think was better than what many people deem a kind of average centre back in Chelsea's department, who we've now loaned out, who I think is more than average, but we've loaned out to Crystal Palace. People may think I've said that enough, but it's on nights like these where in terms of a squad option, you just cannot argue with me and tell me that Trevor Chalobah would be worse than Axel Disasi as a squad option for Chelsea. You just can't. I think you're just being very disingenuous if you're making that argument, because Axel Disasi is a poor centre back, and the idea he's still at Chelsea is baffling to me. Tosin Adebayo has had some nice moments, but I think in the main has been unconvincing for a Premier League ready supposedly centre back. He has looked at times quite fragile, not very assertive, and tonight he got the run around. To be fair, Chelsea's whole defence got the run around by Liam Delap, who was exemplary and maybe saw it as an audition for a potential Chelsea signing. However, given this is a side who will likely still go down, have been struggling to score goals, have been struggling to defend, the ease to which it felt like Ipswich were able to nullify Chelsea, specifically after that second goal, psychologically and tactically, Chelsea seemed to run out of ideas. And that is not something, unfortunately, I have associated with this Chelsea team. One of the things I've always credited about this Chelsea team is how productive they are, how proactive they are, how dangerous they are in attack. There's always a confidence we will create opportunities. That seemed to really dry up. And is it a case of teams starting to figure out Maresca's style of play? The game moves quickly. Tactics are a lot more evolved than they used to be, and you need to keep on your feet. You need to keep moving forward, and that is something that Maresca is going to have to kind of work with. So I think there are flaws within the squad that Maresca is kind of being sat with, unless there is some radical stuff that goes on in January, which always concerns me with Chelsea. But then also, I think Maresca needs to do more himself. He needs to find a way to add another skill potentially to this team, another way this team can get around maybe ways in which teams have tried to nullify them, sit quite deep. You know, really focusing on, say, a player like Cole Palmer and how do you get an extra threat onto the pitch? Can you still get Nkunku and Jackson? I've spoken about it a lot. Is there a way to get Nkunku and Jackson both on the pitch at the same time and see if Nkunku could play as a second forward? I don't think that's a radically... I don't think that's a radical or stupid kind of idea, because at the moment, when things are not working well, I want to see plan B options. And unfortunately, I haven't seen that from Maresca. I didn't do a review, unfortunately, because I was under the weather, of the Fulham game. But that was horrendous game management. This wasn't as horrendous game management, but I guess if you look at some of the players he picked at the start, a player like Disasi, I mean, it cost him at least one goal today. And I just feel that for Maresca, there's going to be some severe questions. For Chelsea, we go on to the Crystal Palace game. Chelsea need to resurrect what has been a good start to the year. I still think there's a lot of talent in this group. I still think there is. You can't simply just write away the last few months and go, well, it's all dead now. No, we can't say that. But I do think it has been quite telling that when games have become congested, or the fixture list has become congested, and Maresca hasn't been able to create that very nice, rhythm of, I have this group for the Conference League, I have this group for the Premier League, and I'm able to kind of rely on one group, and that group's relatively fresh. When things have started to become a little bit merged together, and he's had to start looking at his bench, or he's had to start relying on players who he relied on during the Conference League, things haven't started to work out, because I think there is a drop in level, absolutely. But then also in certain decisions, it's just a little bit bizarre how he isn't looking at certain players when he rotates, but he's looking at others who I think let him down. Those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comments below. Got a lot of 2025 content. Got my predictions for 2025 that I recorded before this game. They're probably more optimistic than a lot of people want to be, but hopefully that'll help you on New Year's Eve, and some other content as we head into the new year. So thank you guys. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.